which brings us back to more of the American form of royalty. The American form of royalty really is more around the idea of celebrity. And we worship celebrities in the sense that worship is where you give your time, energy, and attention. The same way that overseas, anything the royals do makes like the front page of the paper, sells lots of newspapers, sells lots of books. Over here, that's our celebrity class. Celebrities across movie and TV and models and athletes and personalities. And now there's a whole nother category of influencers, Instagram influencers, YouTube stars. Those are our celebrities. And we have kind of these odd formalities as well. As weird as it is for me to watch the coronation, and it's like part fairy tale, part farce. I don't know how to think about it. It blows my mind. I feel the same way watching the Met Gala. And last week, the Met Gala was trending. Every year, it seems like people are trying to one up their looks and everything else. And I think we kind of hit like the point where we jumped the shark this year. It was all a tribute to a designer. I think his name is Karl Lagerfeld or something like that. I literally have no fashion sense. I know none of this. I know it was very controversial. One thing I thought was interesting about the Met Gala is reading about Mr. Lagerfeld, I think is his name, is he's quite a controversial character. And the things that he is controversial for are the things that get you culturally canceled these days. It's confusing to me, honestly, how an entire event was centered around him and everyone themed themselves after him, where the majority of people who did even one of the things that he has controversy surrounding him for would really never be allowed in polite society in our politically correct climate anyway. And he's got a bunch of things, a bunch of people who have come out, a bunch of harassment, a bunch of crazy ideas, a bunch of crazy quotes that would get most people canceled. And it makes me think that as long as you are in the right small segment of society, or maybe working in the right field, or you have the right friends or something like that, then you truly can do all of the things that would lose most people their career and all of their influence, and they'd be ostracized from society, and you can just kind of skate by. And so that was very interesting to me. I don't know exactly maybe how he got away with that, but he did. And the whole thing was about him and around his designs. And we kind of hit like this peak cultural moment when this video went viral of Doja Cat, who's like a singer, hip hop artist. And I want to take a look at her interview. Let's see.
So tell me all about this. Wow. I mean, who made it? Wow. Wow. Okay, so something a little different. So what was your inspiration for tonight? Be honest with me and go into detail.
Wow. Wow. Okay. That is enough of that. Hey, world. What are we doing? Like, this is a gala. It's a fancy event. If you're just listening, she looks like a cat. She has like literal prosthetic things on her face. She has a cat nose. Her hood on her dress has cat ears. And she's meowing, right? Like, what's happening? What is going on here? This is a red carpet interview. And I guess Karl Lagerfeld had cats. He loved cats, which is fine. I recently became a cat dad in the last couple of years. I'm not going to lie. I talk to my cat sometimes. It meows at me. I meow back. We have a conversation. It's fine. I don't tend to do that in public, and I don't tend to do that on the red carpet. And so I want to look at the Met Gala, and part of it is like, how much can we push boundaries? How much can, we dress in ways that are controversial? For a lot of the women, it's like, how much can we get away with being basically nude, and kind of dare someone to say something about it and then charge them with being some form of sexist or something like that. It's just wild. You see people wearing the wildest stuff, the most controversial stuff. Lil Nas X, right, who is kind of famous for putting out a song that every kid loved, about taking his horse with Miley Cyrus's dad down to somewhere, Hannah Montana's dad and Lil Nas X are going to ride their horse to Old Town or whatever. And like, if you actually read the lyrics to that song, you wouldn't let your kids listen to it, but it was, bouncy and fun, and all the kids loved it. And so all the kids loved him. And then his next video that he puts out, he's grinding on Satan, And so that felt a little bit like a trap or whatever. But he shows up to this thing in just a thong. So what are we doing? And uh, immediately. So let me give you the least charitable read on what's going on here, because these are our celebrities. This is our Hollywood royalty, right? This is who we look to. And they are royalty in the sense that, like King Charles, he doesn't make laws, he doesn't execute laws. He's basically a figurehead. Our celebrities don't make the laws, they don't sit in government, they don't have any actual power, but they're the cultural influencers. And the culture influences the heart of the people, the emotions of the people. The culture shapes the minds of the people. And so, there's a quote from, I think, more of a right-wing commentator who said politics is always downstream of culture. And that is true. Like, as the culture goes, so goes the politics. And so the more that we look to these people to influence us in our hearts and our minds, the more it changes how we think and changes how we feel. And then we end up voting based off of how we think and feel. And so these people have immense, immense power. And typically they are celebrated and worshiped by our culture, and they are seen almost as gods themselves. And they get invited to the Met, which is this huge, huge deal. And the thing it immediately made me think of, and I'm just going to let you know right away, this is the least charitable read I could possibly give this. But there is a story in, once again, the Old Testament. And once again, we're talking about a king, this time King Nebuchadnezzar. And King Nebuchadnezzar, he was the king of Babylon, and they had taken over Israel, and they pulled back the brightest and best young men from Israel, and they were serving in the kingdom. And one of these was Daniel, who you might know, even if you don't know a lot about the Bible, from the story of Daniel in the lion's den, right? That's the same Daniel. And Daniel was an interpreter of dreams, and Nebuchadnezzar would have these wild dreams. And one time he had this wild dream about wild animals, and Daniel gave him the interpretation, which was like, you're going to lose your kingdom, and you're going to be thrown out, and you're going to basically lose your mind and turn into a wild animal. We read about this in Daniel chapter 4. It says in verse 28, all this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, as he was walking on the roof of the royal palace in Babylon, the king exclaimed, is this not Babylon the Great, that I have built to be a royal residence by my vast power and for my majestic glory? He's basically going, I'm not just like the king of Babylon. I'm the king of the world. I'm the highest of the high. I am the man. I'm who everyone should look to. And while the words were still in his mouth, a voice came from heaven. King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is declared the kingdom has departed from you. You'll be driven away from people to live with the wild animals, and you will feed on grass like cattle for 7 periods of time until you acknowledge that the Most High is ruler over human kingdoms, and he gives them to anyone he wants. And at that moment, the message against Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away. He ate grass like cattle, and his body was drenched with dew from the sky until his hair grew like eagle's feathers and his nails like birds' claws. And he began to meow incessantly.
Wow. So what are you excited to see?
I made up that last part. But this is like maybe the least charitable read, is these people have lost their minds. They worship themselves. They are the cultural influences. They live as gods and kings, and they're treated as gods and kings. And often they begin to believe that they are gods and kings. And Doja Cat, ironically enough, became a cat. Now, I actually looked into the Met Gala, and I found some interesting history about it. This goes all the way back to like 1914, when there were a couple of women who started a playhouse, not like McDonald's or DZ, the Discovery Zone, like a house to go watch plays, basically a small theater, eventually upgraded to a larger theater. And over about 20 years, they really revolutionized kind of how theaters operated, and especially in the area of costume design. They really apparently took costume design to the next level. And in 1937, all of that closed, but pretty soon their collection was brought over to a museum, and it became like the Costume Institute. In 1946 or 1948, they had the first benefit, which was just the Costume Institute benefit. And this was like $50 a piece, which was crazy money, right? In the 1940s, you could get a ticket. And so it was just the elites of New York, not necessarily the celebrity class, but just the rich and the wealthy. And they would buy tickets to this, and the money would go to support the museum. Over time, this became known as the Met Gala. Like around the 1970s, it started being infiltrated, not just by New York high society, but by celebrities from all over the country. And eventually, one of the people high up at Vogue, Anna something or another, again, I'm so out of this whole high couture fashion thing that it's don't even know why I'm talking about it. But she made it this thing where you had to get invited, and it was only like the most well-known, the most influential people, and they got invited. And so here's a more charitable read of kind of what's going on here. And I think that the truth is probably somewhere between these. The actual name of the Met Gala is a nickname. Officially, the name is the Costume Institute Benefit. And when I learned that, this all made sense to me, like way, way more sense, because what these people are doing is they're wearing costumes. And it did become about high fashion, but it also always remained about costume. And let me tell you the one guy who always understands the assignment at the Met Gala, and that's Jared Leto. Jared Leto dressed as Carl, whoever that this whole thing was about, as his actual cat. Like, he did not wear an outfit as a cat. He didn't get prosthetics as a cat. He wore a cat costume to the Costume Institute benefit. And if you look back through the years, what Jared Leto does is he always wears a costume. One year, he had an actual second head, perfect replica of his head that he carried around with him, like that episode of The Office where it's Halloween and Michael Scott has a paper mache head attached to his shoulder right next to his head. This year, he comes as a 6-foot, gigantic, white, blue-eyed cat. And to me, I hope this is Jared Leto just trolling the entire environment. And look, it's a way for the people that for some reason get all of our attention and time and energy, to be transgressive, to wear crazy things, to be very scantily clad. But what it is it's costumes. Even the people who are looking kind of normal, they're wearing costumes. And a lot of like what high fashion is just costumes. If you watch one runway show at Paris Fashion Week, everything's hideous. Like, none of that would be cool. You would never see somebody wearing one of those things and think, what an attractive person, or I really want to hang out with them, or man, I'd like to date them. You would think, oh, this person's lost their mind. They might as well be dressed like a giant cat, like Jared Leto is dressed at. So where's the truth about the Met Gala? It's probably somewhere in between those things. I do think that there is a lot of celebrity that turns people into King Nebuchadnezzars. They start to believe that they are actually God. I've heard recently Shia LaBeouf talk about this, who has gone through a world of trouble and been in a lot of trouble and had a lot of things go on and been in a lot of controversy. And he talked about how he really believed he was God, like really. And he talked about how common that is among celebrities, and everything is handed to you, and everywhere you go, you're chased down, and people like faint when they touch you, and they beg you for your autograph, and you start thinking like Nebuchadnezzar, I am the Most High. Look at me. I have got all of this going on. And when you begin to believe that, you are just moments away from a depraved mind. And so, yeah, I don't think Doja Cat is like, actually become a cat. I know she's not. She did other interviews where she talked, but it is like, what are we doing here? And it really changed my mind though when I saw it. Like, this is a costume party. This is basically Halloween in May with people who have millions and millions of dollars and can come up with the most elaborate costumes in the world. Here's my advice. We should just stop caring about it. And I realize that's a little bit ironic because I just spent 10 or so minutes talking about it on my own podcast. Luckily, right now, there's very few people watching the podcast. Maybe they'll come back and watch it in the future. But my advice would be quit worshiping celebrities. Quit hounding people for autographs. Quit orienting your life and finding your identity based off of who another celebrity is or the life that they're living that isn't real and actually isn't that much fun anyway because they have no privacy and an incredible amount of pressure on them. Let's just quit worshiping these people, and then the Met Gala can just be a silly Halloween costume party and doesn't have to be like the event of the year where our American royals all show up in their own big coronation to self-congratulate each other and think about their own royalty. That would be my advice, and you can do whatever you want.